It was a bright Saturday morning in Maplewood Estates, a tidy suburban enclave in upstate New York, where the annual 4th of July parade was in full swing. Banners fluttered from porches, kids darted through the crowd with sparklers, and the air smelled of hot dogs and freedom. For a moment, it felt like the kind of day where nothing could go wrong. That is, until Margaret Hensley, the iron-fisted president of the Maplewood Homeowners Association, pulled a stun gun from her purse and tossed my deaf son, Daniel, in front of the entire neighborhood. He was 13 years old, waving a flag, smiling like the world was his. Then, in an instant, he was on the ground, convulsing, while the crowd stood frozen, some filming, none intervening. That was the day my heart broke and the day I swore I'd never let anyone hurt my boy again. My name is Thomas Whitaker, and I'm 52 years old. I've seen my share of battles, 20 years in the Navy, deployments to places I don't talk about at the dinner table. When I retired, all I wanted was a quiet life in a place where I could raise Daniel, my only child, away from the chaos of the world. But life has a way of testing you, doesn't it? What would you do if someone attacked your child for simply existing? Would you stand by, or would something inside you snap? This isn't just a story about one terrible day. It's about justice, about standing up when no one else will, and about a father's love that burns brighter than any hate. So, let me take you back to Maplewood, to the day everything changed. When Daniel and I moved to Maplewood Estates 3 years ago, I thought we'd found our sanctuary. The neighborhood was picture-perfect, manicured lawns, white picket fences, and a community pool that gleamed under the summer sun. The real estate agent had sold it as the ideal place for families, with good schools and friendly neighbors. I was 49 then, a widower raising a deaf son on my own, and I wanted a place where Daniel could thrive. Daniel was born deaf, no explanation, no family history, just one of those things. His mother, Emily, was the light of my life, a high school art teacher with a laugh that could melt the hardest heart. We were married for 10 years before cancer took her, fast and merciless, when Daniel was just a baby. I was left with a newborn, a house full of memories, and a promise to Emily that I'd give our son everything she would have wanted for him. Raising Daniel wasn't easy, but it was the best thing I ever did. I learned American Sign Language, rigged up flashing lights for the doorbell and smoke alarms, and read every book I could find on parenting a deaf child. By 13, Daniel was a force of nature, bright, curious, with a knack for building intricate model airplanes that could make an engineer jealous. His smile could charm the grumpiest neighbor, but the world wasn't always kind to him. Kids at school could be cruel, and adults often didn't know how to handle his difference. Still, I carved out a space for him, and Maplewood seemed like the final piece of that puzzle. The neighborhood was welcoming at first. People waved as they jogged by, and the local diner knew our Saturday morning pancake order by heart. But there was one shadow I didn't see coming: Margaret Hensley. She was the HOA president, a woman in her late 60s with perfectly styled silver hair, crisp linen blouses, and a pearl brooch she wore like a badge of authority. Margaret didn't shout or curse. She wielded her power with a tight smile and a clipboard full of bylaws. From the moment we moved in, she had an opinion about everything: how I trimmed my hedges, the shade of blue on my mailbox, even where Daniel played in our front yard. At first, I brushed it off. I'd dealt with petty bureaucrats in the Navy. I figured Margaret was just a retiree with too much time on her hands. But then she started targeting Daniel. He loved riding his bike through the neighborhood, always on the sidewalks, always wearing a bright orange vest that read, "Deaf child, please be aware." Margaret didn't like it. She called it disruptive and claimed it upset the aesthetic of the community. She sent letters, filed complaints, even brought it up at an HOA meeting, accusing Daniel of careless behavior in front of dozens of neighbors. I tried to stay calm. I told myself not every fight was worth having. But with Daniel, I drew a line. I invited Margaret to a neighborhood barbecue, hoping she'd see Daniel for who he was: a good kid, not a problem. Daniel made her a card, painstakingly decorated with markers and stickers. She thanked us with that thin smile of hers, then the next day sent a violation notice because Daniel had been too loud while playing catch with a friend. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules. It was about control, and Margaret Hensley thrived on it. Margaret wasn't just a nuisance. She was a force of nature, the kind of person who could make you dread checking your mailbox. She'd been HOA president for a decade, and neighbors whispered that she'd written the community handbook herself. Every spring, she sent newsletters dictating how to plant approved flowers. Every fall, she patrolled the streets, measuring the height of Halloween decorations. At first, I thought she was just eccentric, but then I saw how she treated others. There was the young couple down the street, the Pattersons, who put up a swing set for their toddler. It was gone within a week after Margaret cited a safety violation. The Garcias, a retired couple, painted their front door a cheerful red. Margaret fined them for deviating from the neutral palette. I even heard she'd gone after a Gulf War veteran for flying a Marine Corps flag on a pole she deemed too tall. People grumbled, but no one fought back. Margaret had the rules, the power, and a knack for making you feel like you were the problem. Then she zeroed in on Daniel. It started with small things, a note suggesting he not ride his bike after 6 p.m. because it disturbed evening tranquility. Then came the letters, each one more absurd than the last. Please refrain from allowing your child to leave toys on the lawn. Excessive laughter from your property is audible. Your son's medical condition does not exempt him from compliance. She never said deaf, but her meaning was clear. Daniel was different, and to Margaret, different meant defective. I tried to shield Daniel from it. He was a sensitive kid, always eager to please. When Margaret glared at him from her porch, he'd wave, hoping for a smile. She'd look right through him, like he was invisible. I asked a neighbor, Ellen Ramsey, a retired librarian who lived next door, if I was overreacting. She sighed and said, "Margaret's been like this forever, especially with anyone who doesn't fit her mold." Ellen told me Margaret's daughter had once lived in Maplewood, a young woman with bipolar disorder who'd left after a public breakdown. Margaret never mentioned her, but it explained her need for control and excused nothing. One day, during a community cleanup, Daniel volunteered to collect litter around the park. He wore his orange vest, beaming as neighbors thanked him. Margaret pulled me aside afterward and said, "Perhaps your son could wear something less garish next time. That vest draws too much attention." I forced a smile, walked away, but inside, something stirred. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my son, and Margaret wanted us gone. She started showing up at HOA meetings with folders labeled Whitaker violations. She'd snap photos of Daniel riding his bike or sitting on our porch, claiming he was loitering. Every time I pushed back, she'd quote the handbook, reminding me I'd signed it when I bought the house. Daniel never complained, but I saw him shrink a little each time she passed by. He'd sign, "Why doesn't she like me?" And I'd have to explain something I didn't fully understand myself. I kept telling myself to stay calm, to be the bigger man. But each letter, each glare, each complaint stoked a fire I hadn't felt since my days in uniform. The 4th of July parade was Maplewood's big event, a tradition that brought out every family in the neighborhood. Porches were draped in red, white, and blue, and the local high school band led the way with trumpets and drums. Kids tossed candy from floats, and grandparents clapped from lawn chairs. For once, the neighborhood felt alive, not stifled by Margaret's rules. Daniel had been counting down the days. He was marching with the community center's youth group, a mix of kids who'd welcomed him with open arms. His counselor, Ms. Larson, had taught the group basic signs so Daniel could feel included. They'd even helped him make a badge that read, "Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm deaf, but I'm here to celebrate." He pinned it to his shirt, grinning like it was a medal. He'd practiced his march in our driveway, waving a small flag to an imaginary crowd. He couldn't hear the music, but he felt the rhythm in his bones, and I'd never seen him so proud. I stood on the corner of Elm Street, holding a sign that read, "Go Daniel," next to Ellen and a few other parents. My old Navy buddy, Sheriff Mike Callahan, was stationed near the community center, keeping an eye on the crowd. Everything felt right until it didn't. Daniel's group came down the street, steps in sync, flags waving. He was at the front, his smile visible from a block away. As they passed Margaret's house, something shifted. She stepped off her porch, lips pursed, holding something in her hand. I thought it was her phone, maybe to record Daniel for another complaint. But then I saw the glint of metal, the black casing, and my heart stopped. A stun gun. She didn't shout, didn't warn him. She walked up to Daniel, "Calm as you please," and pressed the stun gun to his side. The crackle of electricity cut through the music. Daniel's body jerked, then collapsed. His flag hit the ground, his glasses skidded across the pavement, and his small frame crumpled like a broken toy. The crowd gasped. Some screamed. A few parents pulled their kids back, while others fumbled for their phones, recording but not moving. I dropped my sign and ran, my boots pounding the asphalt. Years of training kicked in focus, move, protect. I reached Daniel in seconds, scooping him into my arms. His eyes fluttered, his hands twitched, his breaths came in shallow gasps. I shouted his name, knowing he couldn't hear me, but I couldn't stop. I turned to Margaret. She stood there, stun gun in hand, looking more irritated than remorseful. "He was trespassing," she said, her voice flat. "He didn't stop when I told him to." "He's deaf, you monster," I roared, cradling Daniel. "He can't hear you." "I warned him," she snapped. He ignored me. Mike sprinted over, hand on his holster, yelling for the crowd to back up. He took one look at Daniel, then at Margaret, and his face hardened. "Margaret, drop that weapon. Now." She blinked, unfazed. He startled me. I feared for my safety. "He's a 13-year-old kid in a parade." Mike barked. "Put it down." Margaret hesitated, then set the stun gun on the ground. Mike cuffed her, reading her rights as she protested, claiming self-defense, claiming Daniel had provoked her. I carried Daniel to the medical tent, where EMTs checked his vitals and treated the burn on his side. He was dazed, signing frantically, asking why someone had hurt him. I signed back, "You're safe now. I've got you." But inside, I was anything but calm. A rage I hadn't felt in years burned through me, and I knew this was far from over. The ambulance doors closed behind Daniel, and something in me shifted. For years, I'd swallowed Margaret's complaints, ignored her snide remarks, thinking silence was strength. But the moment she hurt my son, the rules changed. I wasn't just a dad anymore. I was a man with a mission. After ensuring Daniel was stable at the hospital, I called Mike. We'd served together in the Navy, seen things that bonded us for life. He knew I wasn't just a grieving father, I was a man who could build a case and see it through. "Still got those instincts?" he asked. "Never lost them," I said. "Just stopped using them. Until now." I started with the evidence. Mike got me the body cam footage from Margaret's arrest and the parade committee's surveillance videos. 3 cameras had caught the incident from different angles. I posted on the neighborhood's online forum, asking for witness statements or videos. Within hours, responses poured in. Neighbors had seen it, filmed it, but were too shocked to act in the moment. The footage was damning. Margaret approached Daniel without warning, stun gun ready, and attacked. No hesitation, no mistake premeditated. But I didn't stop there. I dug into Margaret's past, and what I found chilled me. 6 years earlier, she'd been HOA president in a community called Cedar Hills, 30 miles away. An old newspaper article revealed she'd been ousted after targeting a family with a child who had Down syndrome. She'd filed endless complaints about the girl's disruptive behavior, even tried to ban her from the community park. When the family fought back, Margaret allegedly falsified records to justify fines. They sued, settled out of court, and she moved to Maplewood, rebuilding her empire one rule at a time. I tracked down the Cedar Hills family. They remembered Margaret vividly, their voices tight with anger. I gathered statements, articles, and screenshots, building a file that showed her pattern: control, intimidation, and targeting the vulnerable. Mike sat with me one night, flipping through the documents. "You've done half my job, Tom," he said. "This is ironclad." "I'm not here to fix fences," I said. "Not when it comes to Daniel." The next step was going public. With Mike's help, we organized a town hall meeting at the community center. HOA members, residents, and even a local reporter showed up. Margaret, out on bail, walked in with her pearl brooch and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She had no idea what was coming. I stood at the front, projecting the surveillance footage on a screen. The room fell silent as Margaret's actions played out her calm approach, the stun gun's crackle, Daniel's collapse. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then I showed the Cedar Hills article, read witness statements, and listed the 27 violations Margaret had filed against Daniel, from excessive chalk art to improper posture on the porch. Finally, I spoke as a father. "My son has never hurt anyone," I said. "He's deaf, not dangerous." Margaret Hensley didn't act out of fear. She acted out of hate. And I won't let her hurt another child. The room erupted. Neighbors shared their own stories: unfair fines, shamed kids, lives controlled by Margaret's whims. Ellen Ramsey recounted how Margaret had berated a group of kids for selling cookies. A father admitted he'd stayed silent out of fear, but couldn't anymore. Mike announced the sheriff's department was investigating Margaret's past, including her time at Cedar Hills. I handed over a petition with 120 signatures, demanding her removal from the HOA and a permanent ban from any leadership role. Margaret stood, pale and silent, clutching her purse. Her reign was over, but this wasn't just about her. It was about taking back our neighborhood, our peace, our right to live without fear. 3 days later, Margaret was charged with felony assault on a minor with a weapon. The district attorney said the evidence left no room for doubt. What she did was deliberate. The story spread first local news, then state outlets. A neighbor's phone video went viral with the hashtag #JusticeForDaniel, and I watched it with a mix of pain and resolve. No parent wants their child's suffering to be public, but if it meant protecting others, it was worth it. Margaret's lawyer claimed she'd feared for her safety, that Daniel had lunged at her. The lie didn't hold. Her bail was revoked after she tried contacting HOA board members to sway their testimony, leading to a witness tampering charge. Meanwhile, Maplewood transformed. Neighbors who'd barely spoken began gathering on porches, organizing meetings without HOA oversight. Ellen offered to lead a temporary residence committee, working with the county's disability office to draft inclusive guidelines. People brought casseroles, set up picnic tables, and talked openly about the years they'd let Margaret's rules suffocate them. Daniel struggled at first. The burn on his side healed, but the fear lingered. He didn't want to leave the house, and his parade flag sat untouched in his room. But one day, Ellen stopped by with a gift, a scrapbook from the youth group, filled with photos, notes, and messages like, "You're our hero, Daniel." His eyes lit up as he read it. He signed, "They think I'm brave?" "They know you are," I signed back. He looked at me, hands steady. "I want to march again." My heart swelled. "Then we'll march." Weeks later, the community held the Daniel Walk for Inclusion, a simple event retracing the parade route. Daniel led, wearing a vest he'd designed. Deaf kids belong. Every house was decorated, neighbors cheered, and Margaret's home stood empty. She'd been evicted from the HOA and was selling her property. Mike walked beside me, grinning. "You started something here, Tom." "I just wanted my son to be safe," I said. "That's how change starts," he replied. At Margaret's trial, I testified, not with anger, but with truth. "I'm here for accountability," I told the judge. "My son didn't deserve this, and if we excuse it, we're telling every disabled child they're less than. I won't let that happen." Margaret never looked at me. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison, with mandatory counseling and a lifetime ban from HOA roles. A civil suit followed, and while I can't share details, Daniel's future is secure. The real victory was Maplewood. Neighbors spoke up, laws were revised, and other communities adopted our inclusive charter. Daniel spoke at a state disability awareness event, earning a standing ovation he felt in his chest. 6 months later, he joined the school's cross-country team, outrunning me on our morning jogs. His spirit, not his scar, defines him. One evening, as we sat on the porch, I asked Daniel if he remembered the parade. He nodded, signing. That's when everything changed. I took his hand, and when we showed the world how strong you are. He picked up his old parade flag and twirled it, grinning. Maplewood is different now, more laughter, less fear. We hold monthly neighbor nights, where families gather just to be together. The world still has its Margarets, but we know how to stand against them. We speak louder than hate, even if some of us speak with our hands. If you've ever fought for someone you love, or faced injustice in your own life, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about violence and unfairness in our communities? Should we confront it head-on, or is there another way? Share your perspective. I am listening. Your voice matters, just like Daniel's.